Good morning, and thanks for joining us here on Condo Solutions. Every Monday morning from 9 to 10 o'clock, we talk about some of the things that might affect you and your condo or homeowners association, maybe some of the things that you're concerned about or have questions about, or maybe just wondering, can they really do that? And then a lot of times people are new to the condo and HOA market here in Florida and are not familiar with some of the rules and regulations. Where we really do have a pretty good system of state laws that back you up as a homeowner, and that's a good thing too. And it's good to know about some of that. That's our purpose. My name is Mark Breckbill. I'm a CPA and a licensed community association manager, and have been practicing in the area of condos and HOAs for 25 or 26 years now. And along with me is Peter Mullengarden. Peter is an attorney who has been practicing as an attorney in this area a lot longer than me as a CPA. So he's been doing this for 35, 40 years at least. And he's seen it all, done it all. So he's got a lot of practical experience to give you, and we're here for that. So just a little bit about the show. It's pretty straightforward. You can call in with questions. If you don't call with questions, we ramble on. So it's a good thing if you call with questions. But you call with a question, you give us a name. Doesn't have to be your name, but we just need a name, something to call you. And we don't need your association. In fact, we prefer not, because sometimes people hear an association and think, that's not my problem, that's their problem. And it turns out it's the same problem. So therefore, we don't need an association, but we will give you an answer based on our understanding of your situation. Now, one of the things we always warn about is that we only give what we call radio answers, which means that we make it up. No, it means that we don't have your documents, so it means we can't look at your documents and see. And sometimes the documents will change the answer. So for that reason, we're going to give you an answer based on your interpretation of your documents and based on common practices and laws and court cases and things like that. But if you need an answer where you're going to court, it's a good idea. It's a good idea to be able to have somebody look at your documents and see if maybe it changes the answer. It's also the reason why when we do talk about a question on the air, we will talk a little broader about it, maybe delve into some other areas in case somebody else has a problem that's similar to that, but not exactly the same. So that's kind of the ground rules. It's pretty easy. Don't be afraid. Evan's pretty nice when you call in. He hardly ever yells. I mean, just maybe once out of every 3 calls. I've heard him. Well, he does hang up on people, but no, he he will take your call and get you on the air. So just kind of letting you know what's going on there. Good morning, Peter. How are you?
I'm well. Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. It's a cold Monday in January, and I'm freezing my whatever off, and it's kind of it's it's you're in Florida in the winter when you smell the stuff burning off of the air conditioning unit. The all of the dust that as you turn the heat on for the once in the whole winter that you're probably going to need the heat. So I broke down, flipped it on in the office, same thing. Hopefully the office is still there when I get up there, but it was cold. I think here in Stewart this morning, it was 41 degrees and a wind chill. So that's not good for South Florida, 41 degrees and wind chill. So I bundled up a little bit. But yeah, it's going to be a cold one, I think, today, but then a little warm up, I think, next couple days. But
well, when it's 40 here, then it's 0 up north.
Yeah,
so
I know.
I always look at it that way.
Yeah. Do you do the same?
Relative.
Do you do the same thing I do, Peter? Call your friends up north and say, "God, it's cold down here. It's like 60." I always do that. It's so much fun when you call somebody. They're in the midst of a snowstorm and a blizzard and an ice storm, and they're locked in their house, freezing to death. And you call them and say, "Man, it's cold down here. It's like 67 degrees. I wish it would warm up."
I try not to complain when it's 55 or 60 degrees. Like that's like a spring day for half the country.
Yeah, I know they're swimming at that temperature, but yeah, it's kind of funny. I used to do that with a friend of mine. This time of the year, I was always trying to get him to move down here. He was a CPA, to move down here and come to work with, come into practice with me. And So I would always call him like this time of the year. He's up in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. It's low hanging fruit. Hey, yeah, it's 65 here, and it's like, well, it's minus 30 here, so don't bother me. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of, I like it when it gets a little cool, and so I can't complain. But anyway, it is a little cool this morning. I guess that's a qualification. So, all right, I think we got our first caller this morning, John. Morning. How are you?
Good morning, and Mark, you're a man of my heart. I mean, I do the same thing. I can't help myself if it's 60 degrees. But I hope you guys had a great weekend.
Yeah. How about you?
Good. Just full of football, of course. My question is regarding an election that is in, or possible dispute of an election. It mentions in the statutes under 720 that a person has to be a member to contest the election, but it doesn't say it has to be a nominee or someone who was running against somebody else. Is that your understanding, Peter, that it could just be anybody in the membership? Because I don't want to hear them say you don't have standing.
Yes, any member can contest an election.
Now, here's the issue. This is talking about an owner who is a corporation who put their lots into an LLC, which is a company, limited liability company. But in our docs, it does mention that either a corporation or another business entity is what it says, which would fall under LLC. LLC, I'm under that, must provide voting certificates. That's one of the issues. But the biggest issue is whether someone, such as a corporation, and like I said, they listed their lots in an LLC, can delegate their nominees. And if they can they not just nominate one, but nominate two? Because my scenario is this. In my community, it says, and we just amended our documents in 2019, that you have to be an owner to be a nominee. And that scenario would say, if I'm married and my wife's not on the deed, I cannot, as the owner of the property, nominate her. Am I wrong, Peter?
Right, because she's not eligible to serve because she's not a record owner.
Yes, and in 617, it does say, and I hate to get wonky if anyone's listening, that's just, I think, the statute for corporations.
Not-for-profit corporation.
That's a not-for-profit corporation act.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. Which we are, not for profit. It says directors must be natural persons who are 18 years or older. So I can't see where a corporation, even though they listed it into an LLC, their lots, can nominate anyone.
Well,
I think an LLC probably would have the ability to have a representative on the board. Someone from that LLC could be considered to be a member, quote unquote, or an owner, quote unquote. I don't think it would be precluded. I'm not sure they'd be able to have multiple representatives. Like, for example, just going back to what you said before, under the Homeowner Association Act, there currently is no preclusion or no prohibition from multiple owners serving on the board together, like a husband and wife who are both on the deed. Okay, in a condominium act, they cannot, except for limited circumstances. If there's less than 10 units, or if there aren't enough candidates, or if they own more than one unit. The HOA Act doesn't have a prohibition, but I'm not sure and I've never had this issue come up, quite frankly. I don't know if an entity could have multiple owners. I think they could have at least one designated rep, who could serve on the board as a member, but not multiple. I don't think.
But John, didn't you say that they own multiple lots in different LLCs? Or
if they own multiple lots, they could run for each lot.
Yeah,
it's all in the same LLC. The multiple lots are listed identical. The
but they're
ownership is
in,
difficult.
so there's multiple lots in the LLC. So the LLC
Yeah.
owns 2 lots is really what, or multiple lots is really what it boils down to.
Well, they can have one for one and one for
Yeah,
another.
yeah. See, here's the thing, John, and this is, I'm a big fan of LLCs from a business standpoint. I use them all the time. They're very, very effective. They're primarily very effective from an asset protection standpoint. People look at them as other things for tax and stuff, but their primary purpose is to protect from liability and those kind of things. So if I'm on the other side of this transaction and I'm buying I have a client buying a piece of property, I'm going to encourage them to do that in an LLC. We might do it in the same LLC, or depending upon how much equity is in that LLC, we might do it in multiple LLCs. We might move it later, which we can do because there's no tax effect to that. Now, there might be some legal costs or legal impact to it, but putting on my association hat, and I hate LLCs and corporations, and even to some degree trusts from from a uh, from a homeowners association condo standpoint, because that corporate ownership, for the very reason that I use it on the other side, provides a shield against liability. So you have a situation when you really look at it, if you've got an LLC that owns a lot, um, they could walk away from their assessments pretty easy just by bankrupting that LLC. Or if we got into a situation where, there was, the economy went bad again, and, maybe there's some issues out there, some things like that. It's pretty easy to walk away from an LLC. It's pretty easy to create a situation where there's no value in an LLC, so that the association is kind of in a difficult spot. That's why people use them, is as a fallback, so that somebody
Well, they're in
can.
a difficult spot to get a personal judgment. They can still pursue the property.
Oh,
Don't
yeah,
they?
yeah,
Okay.
exactly,
Well,
yeah.
I don't want the listeners to think that, well, you're out of luck completely.
No,
It's-
no, I'm
you're
sorry.
not.
I did. Yeah, that's a good point, Peter. No, I didn't mean that. I just meant that against an
Personal
individual.
judgment, you're out. Personal judgment, you're out of luck.
I've said before that uh, it's until they fix it, and they've fixed it in some areas, they haven't fixed it in other areas. If you own your unit in a condominium association, free and clear, all right. So I've got my unit, I own it free and clear. You have an unlimited liability in a if the other unit owners don't pay, and the association, for whatever reason, doesn't have recourse against them, um, then you're stuck paying forever and ever, as much as it needs to be. If you're the last person paying, you're paying everybody. I mean, it's really kind of a weird situation, and there's no protection uh, under the law for that. And Peter and I have talked about this before. There is some other portions in the statutes where there is some there is some protection, but in the overall for assessments, there is no limit to what a person has to pay in assessments for for their unit. So um, it's a very difficult situation, and that's why even if I owned the unit free and clear, if I'm in an association that allows you to, if I'm in an association that allows you to put it in a corporate entity like an LLC, I'm going to put mine in an LLC just so that I'm not stuck. I could walk away from the LLC. The LLC still has liability, but it doesn't have any assets. So just a thought I throw out there for people. It is, some people, they don't like that. They don't want to be in a situation where they owe money, but they in effect are the same as a general partner in a general partnership. They have kind of unlimited liability for assessments, at least. So,
Well, let me just ask you
Although-
about that 617 that says natural person. I mean, let's wiggle with the legal wiggle, and I say that affectionately, Peter, because I know, you can look at a sentence and it can look awfully you can make it awfully ambiguous. How is a corporation a natural person?
it's not, but it's nominee.
Corporation is not a natural person. A corporation is not a natural person.
Right, but it would nominate its nominee.
But it's not serving. I mean, the corporation isn't serving on the board.
Right.
But I think would have the ability to designate someone representing the corporation who is a natural person.
Right.
Yeah, but you just said the magic word, you think, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. That's what we're trying to get at. We're trying to find out.
Well, I can.
Well,
How
I would
does that
say,
happen? What's
okay,
the mechanism?
I will take out the word think. Yes, I think I said it again. Yes, the corporation would have the ability to be represented on that board. In my opinion, as a member of the association.
Yeah, because John, corporations have to operate through their officers or generally through, through their legally designated person.
Okay, but we
officer.
never got that, is what I'm getting at. Nobody ever notified us from the corporation who these people are.
Well, they're public in general. Now,
went to Sunbiz, and trust me, these two people that are on the board now that got elected from their own votes from all their lots. Nobody else in that neighborhood voted a single vote for them because they knew they were going to be outvoted by their multiple lots. Nowhere in Sunbiz are these two names listed.
No, and if it's an LLC, they don't have to be. Only the manager has to be listed. The manager doesn't have to be an individual. But if you go on Sunbiz, it's going to list the manager. That's who is authorized to represent that's who's authorized to sign off on and represent the LLC. All right. So,
but don't they have to notify us? So the manager has to send us a written authorization of who these candidates will be for the company. Because I know we went down here before where if the corporation just doesn't say anything, we can just assume after a month or so that these people are. But, assuming can get you in trouble because maybe 6 months later, a large corporation just doesn't know what's going on in Hickville. And they find out that these two candidates nominated themselves. And then are we liable as an association because we didn't do our due diligence?
Not if you had a reasonable belief that person had authority. So a manager in an LLC based on that position is assumed to have authority unless there's something that says they don't. So if for example, in this case, the manager would be the person that has the authority to appoint or represent. So if the manager is not one of the people, then the assumption is that they are appointed. You would, as an association, obtain documentation from them showing who had the authority to appoint and who it is they've appointed. And that would come in the form of a written consent or some other documentation that they would sign. And that is really all they would need to do to show that they had. You as an association certainly have the right to ask for that information because you need to know who's going to be serving, who is the person. They can't just rotate that person in, you'd have to have somebody serving. Although, I wonder about that, Peter, if, could they get they have to name a person, which, in an LLC, the manager can be an entity, but they have to name a person. Doesn't have to be the manager. They have to just name an individual to represent. But I would think that the LLC would have the right to remove that person and appoint somebody else because
no, they couldn't just switch them out. I mean, while they're on the board.
Yeah, I mean, if it's actually,
no, I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, that's the only thing I wondered is
I think that person then would be disqualified. That would be like, I don't think they could just switch out. I've never seen that.
Yeah, I know you can't work by proxy. So as a manager of an LLC, but I just kind of wonder if at some point, getting to John's question, if,
that's almost like saying, I'm not sure this is a good analogy. Maybe it's a bad analogy, but if you had that husband-wife situation before and one of them was on the board, but they were both owners. And then the one that was on the board then died. The other one doesn't step in just because they happen to be from the same unit. Okay. Or the same lot. No. So the lot doesn't really have control over their member like that to switch them out to someone else.
Yeah. Although,
because it's the person that was elected, that's the rep on the board.
Yeah. But But I guess what I see what you're saying, but what I'm saying is if you were elected to represent the interest of an entity, you're
Yeah, but that entity just can't start switching people on that board. I don't think so. No.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a
No, I would not. No.
no.
I'm just gonna say no.
So to switch gears, an entity, because when I first started, I gave you the analogy, which you just brought up again, but you made them both owners, both board members in the same household. But let's just say, like I said, the husband owns, the wife doesn't. Husband cannot delegate wife to be his money to the board. But here's a big but. If you're an entity, you can get around that. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah.
And you also mentioned that you can't have two nominees from this entity because you have, let's say, two lots. That gives you the
They own
ability
multiple.
to
Yeah,
run.
they own multiple lots. So yes.
So how do you vote for these two people if you're this entity? You can split your vote between these two people?
You'd get a
What do you mean?
vote per lot.
What do you mean split your vote? I mean, they would just vote for each of them, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Right. So you would have, yeah. So if, let's say I have 10 lots and I
Right.
get to vote for two people in on the board, I don't have to go 5 votes and 5 votes. I can cast all 10 votes for both of them.
Just like anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're both
Okay.
running. They're both running independently. So yeah.
I understand. This was just a question somebody brought
No,
up
no,
in their
No,
person.
yeah,
I
they
just
would be
thought I would ask it for them.
Yeah, they would be able to cast. I mean, they're not accumulating their votes there. Okay, they're just voting for two different candidates 10 times.
Okay, so if we go back to the second problem, the other major problem, the voting certificate that was not provided the night of the annual meeting election, how does that play out?
Well, that may be sufficient. I mean, the cases are not that consistent. I think I mentioned before, voting certificates, number one, there has to be a history within the community that they use the voting certificates to determine, who is authorized to vote for a lot or a unit. If there's no history of the voting certificates being used for that, then typically the division doesn't then say, well, in this instance, we are going to look at it because there's no history there. If there's a history of the association being pretty careful and consistent with requiring the voting certificate requirement, just for lots to vote or for units to vote, then there may be, I'm gonna say may here because I don't know, there may be sufficient grounds. Typically the division isn't real keen on overturning elections. In my experience, they will. It kind of depends on the circumstance. So it may be grounds. I mean, you have to bring the challenge within 60 days of the date of the election. That's number one. There is a deadline. And it depends whether they think it's sufficient grounds to say that this person was not an eligible candidate.
Now on
depends on the bylaws and everything else, and you have to look at all the circumstances.
Now on our ledger, when you come in for the annual meeting and you vote, if you're in present, you sign the ledger. If you're not and you send in a proxy, they're supposed to check off the proxy. Now these are the columns, and one of the columns has voting certificate. So is that enough to substantiate that we are following voting certificates if the ledger for this year had voting certificate in a column for that?
Yeah, I mean, if they have the voting certificates on file and they're actually using them to determine who is authorized to vote pursuant to the association's documents, usually the bylaws. So yeah, I mean, sounds like from what you've said that they do follow the dictates of their documents pretty closely.
When you say they, what happens always?
I say they, the association, they, the board, the association, historically, whoever has been in control.
I understand. Just wanted to explain with the election, most associations use the property management company to tabulate and to, do the ledger and so on, because they keep the list of members, the owners. So if this is a new company and they, I've seen them, voting certificates on file at the office, but this company just came on board this year in April, and this is their first election with us. I mean, I don't know what they did or they didn't do as far as due diligence and following the fact that there are on file certificates. But all I know is there was on the sign-in sheet a column that stated voting certificate next to proxy, next to if you sign your signature if you're there in person.
Right. But if in the past, the association has been diligent in requiring that all, that anyone else, that anyone casting a vote, had to be named on the certificate if it was a lot owned by more than one person or owned by an entity. The fact that in this particular year, the management company, because they're an agent, would have been required to follow that same pattern, that same practice, and if they didn't, that could give the rise to a challenge.
Okay. Now, when you say a challenge, of course, you have to file through the department at the challenge, and it goes to binding arbitration.
Well, it goes to arbitration, correct?
Okay. And, well, is it considered binding or is it not?
Well, they can appeal it, so it's binding unless appealed. So
okay, so can both parties agree before they go that it will be binding?
I believe that's true. Yes, I don't litigate these cases, but
yeah, okay, it's all right. I don't mean to
you can always waive.
Just trying to get information on
either party can. Yes, I mean the parties. I don't know why they would, but yeah, they could always waive their rights.
Yeah. So, but you haven't been down this road before, as far as how long it takes, how expensive it can get.
Well, they're relatively quick with the election arbitrations because of the nature of the case. Okay. So whether it's a matter of weeks or months, they're pretty fast with the elections. Just like with recall, they're also pretty fast, only because if it takes a year, then it's moot because so they are pretty quick. The cost, that's hard to say. I mean, it's much less expensive than a court case, generally speaking, because you don't have all the discovery, you don't have depositions, you don't have interrogatories, you don't have, a lot of, hearings. One side produces their petition and whatever evidence they have to back that up, the other side responds. The arbitrator may ask for more information. They may have some kind of telephonic conference on it, but it's relatively quick. And I'm going to use the word relatively inexpensive, because again, you're not going through what you do in a court case.
Do you care to put a number?
Well, it's usually anything. It's in the thousands, but it's not like 50,000. I don't know.
So we're talking no more than 10,000, maybe.
I think it's probably less than that. Yeah. It's less. I would say maybe 2 to 5, but if there's not a lot of stuff going on.
And do you think something as simple as those two questions I asked would take probably 60 days for an arbitrator to decide?
It's probably less.
Okay, because sometimes one party, if they really want to be nasty, let's say the association, I mean, as a member, you're suing yourself because the association attorney is representing the association. So you're suing your own, I mean, not suing, but, you're costing your own attorney that you're paying through assessments.
Now, but you always have to remember, there is a prevailing party attorney's fees. Okay.
That too.
So
yeah, that's what I mean.
You gotta be careful stepping into it, because, you could step into it.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to make sure that it's pretty concrete, because when you said 2 to 5, are you including their fees too?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
so no, I'm not including their fees. I'm not including their fees.
Oh, you're not? Okay. So then it could be 10. Okay.
Oh yeah, could be 10. I was just talking about y'all,
No, that's all right. That's okay. The thing is, the only thing they would have to produce, meaning if one party sued the association, and in this case it's about voting certificates, then the only thing that we request from the association would be the voting certificates. Now, let's just say they disappeared after. I mean, I've seen these certificates, but they disappear. They say, well, we can't find them. I mean, there's really no way around that, is there?
Yeah, I don't know whether the arbitrator would punish them for that, in a sense, hold that against them. And by the way, I I really, it's always very, very difficult, and I don't want to go back on this too much, but to estimate attorney's fees. So they always seem to be higher than what I think they're going to be. So just keep
Well,
that in
yeah,
mind.
that's what I was getting at. Is they can file motion to delay or motion to continue, whatever. They can file this.
They can file certain things. It's just not nearly as much as in a court case, but yeah, they can still file some stuff.
Yeah, just to be nasty.
But the more straightforward the question is, the cheaper it'll be, because basically it's all based on hours. So if this is something that, do they have to have a voting certificate? Did they have a voting certificate? That's kind of pretty straightforward. Whereas the other issue is, did they timely file this or that? Or did they, where you've got some judgment involved, or maybe the law is not 100% clear, things like that. That gets that can get a little bit more involved, because now you've got more time to produce evidence. You got more time. Your attorney's going to have more time. Both parties get more documentation. But and then in some of those cases, you're talking about maybe bringing in an outside expert or whatever, and then it can get expensive. But again, if it's crafted just on the election and the question of voting certificates, then that probably is going to be a more manageable number from a legal standpoint than, some wide open arbitrary question that, could take weeks to resolve. So
yeah, no, I understand it. You got to keep it pretty cut and dry, because all we're asking for is the arbitrator to look at our docs and see what our docs say and if they were followed or not. It's not like we have to produce a lot of evidence.
But as Peter mentioned, kind of in a side note, with his, what he was talking about is that a lot of times, if I'm the attorney representing the person that doesn't really have a good position, I'm going to try to create some additional uncertainty so that I can move down multiple avenues if this one doesn't fail, so it may seem like on face it's a question about a voting certificate, but then the question was, well, did the association notify the buyer when they bought that they needed a voting certificate, and did they purposely not notify this person so that they wouldn't be able to vote? They knew they'd be able to use it against them. Did they, was there any notification at the time that they cast their vote? Was there enough indication that they were supposed to provide a voting certificate with it? They're going to try to complicate it if it's not real straightforward. Even if it is kind of straightforward, they're going to kind of try to create other avenues. So, like I said, simpler the question, the better. But the attorney's job in that case is to make it more complicated so that he or she wins. I mean, that's their job.
The association's attorney is what you just mentioned.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah. And even with a simple question, even with the cut and dry, if it was just about voting certificates, you just illustrated how crazy that can get. But that's just the way it is. That's the nature of the beast.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that, with condos, and I assume, I don't know, Peter, if it works the same for HOAs sometimes, but I know for condos, you a lot of them, you have to actually file when you buy the unit. You have an ownership certificate that you have to, that actually gets filed, showing that you're a member or whatever. So that, I think that's a big advantage on the on the associations, on the condo side, having those kind of things, because then there's no question as to who owns the unit, and who's authorized.
I'm not really, because I'm not familiar with that. Usually it's just a recorded deed, and that's what you look to.
Oh, really?
In terms of,
no,
yeah, I've never seen an ownership certificate. You just look to I only looked at the deeds.
Actually, when two of the associations, the one Ed used to manage out on the island, that when I was out there for a while, that one had, I had to get that approved and filed. It had to be filed with my purchase
often the approval certificate usually is filed that you were approved as a purchaser. Many documents require that the certificate of approval be recorded in addition to the deed, but not an ownership certificate.
Well, okay,
that would be duplicative. That would be duplicative of the deed.
Yeah, no, I understand. I meant the approval certificate.
Okay,
because it had that I was approved to be the
Yeah,
to
that's
put,
that's
yeah,
pretty
okay.
common.
Yeah.
So,
So,
I just found something I forgot to mention earlier when we were talking about casting, or I was asking about casting votes. It says each member shall have and cast as many votes as the number of lots, but that at the very end, it says no member may divide or allocate such votes. What does that mean, Peter?
No member may divide or
Or
allocate.
allocate.
it means super voting. So
You can't cumulate, and there's no
Yeah.
cumulative voting.
that's what
usually.
they're getting at, I think. Is
And what
the
does that
The
mean? I'm
cumulative
sorry.
voting, it's like, rather than voting 10 votes for one person, I'm going to vote 40 votes for one person because I didn't vote for anybody else. But you can't do that,
right?
you
Yeah.
know.
So if you can
so-
vote for 3 candidates and you got 10 votes, you
Or
can't.
maybe, or maybe it's saying that, rather than voting my 10 votes for this person, I can't split it with 5. I don't know, like that. That's possible.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about before.
I don't know.
Remember, the two nominees running for the same entity, if they could divide it. But when I read that, I'm like, no member may divide or allocate such votes. They each get
I think
one
when they
vote
check
per
the
lot.
box, they're voting their votes for that person. Now they can vote. Obviously, if there's 4 people running, they can vote up for 4 people, so it's 10 votes each person because they're voting. Just like you vote your 1 vote 4 times.
Yeah,
Well, they're voting their 10 votes 4 times, right?
yeah, yeah.
But I don't think they can
makes sense.
split it. I don't think they can split it 5 for this, 5 for that, 5 for that. I guess that's what they're getting at.
Okay. Now, one last thing that they want to consider, the group that is going against the association, is where the 3 board members who were on the previous board ran. They ran we have a section A, B, C, and they ran in C. And in C, it says that they all have to pay common assessments. But one of the people that was running was the president. And when they created the budget last year, they removed the management fee, which is, I consider, a common expense that we all have to pay from Group C. So the old term quid pro quo, I'm not Latin, but would an arbitrator look at that as a conflict to get their votes?
They drop their obligation to pay the management fee.
Yeah, the management fee, that new management company I was telling you about is the biggest fee for the common expenses. Plus, there's what's called administrative fees, which are, all the other things like postage stamps and the attorney's costs and whatnot. They left the administrative fee, but they removed the management fee from this Group C. And this person, plus 2 others that were on the old board, decided we're going to run in this group. And they all got elected, of course, because each one of those, they got 3 votes because there's only 5 votes in that group. And the 3 owners in this group that voted, all received large deductions in their assessments because they were no longer paying the property management fee.
Why would they be paying the property management fee?
But don't your documents say that everyone pays? Usually HOAs, it's equal, but not always. But don't these? But your documents say how they allocate the common expenses. I'm not sure how they drop one group from paying a portion of the common expenses.
I didn't want to get too far in the woods, but this Group C stands for commercial. Commercials, it says shall pay 10% of all common expenses. That's the way our docs read. The residential lots shall pay 90% of all common expenses. Assessments, common assessments. So it's clear they have to pay 10%, whatever that is. So let's say it's $100,000. These 5 lots have to pay $10,000, and they divvy it up that way. But it doesn't say anything about removing common expenses. Common assessments from this group.
Yeah, I don't think they can. That doesn't sound kosher to me. That's my word for the day. But
my question was, do you think an arbitrator would consider that in an election challenge?
Probably not. Okay. Because that's a different issue. I'm not sure what the relationship with the election is.
Well, all 3 votes that voted got huge deductions in their common assessments. Like one guy got $4,400 and they were already behind. I mean, they haven't even paid from last year. They owe over $6,000. So this that's a pretty hefty reduction in your assessments. Another vote, like I said, they only got 3 votes. Number 2.
So
was
you're saying that they got
reduction.
an advantage? They got an advantage because they didn't have to pay?
Yeah, they got a huge decrease in their common assessments.
No, I see that, but I'm not sure how that relates to the election challenge.
Well, the
Um,
individuals who are running got their, because of that vote to eliminate that, they
Yeah.
got lower assessments. Everybody's assessments were lower, but theirs got lowered. So the
You're saying
people,
they bought their votes?
yeah,
I guess?
basically the people that
Okay, I'm
were
sorry. All
voting
right.
for him because.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that just raises it. Well, maybe I don't.
Well, the problem is if you got an HOA that may pull that out of the ability to use an arbitrator. You don't want to pull in a document issue into an arbitration on elections because the division isn't going to be able to handle that.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I'm getting at, and that's what I'm telling this group not to do, because that opens a whole can of worms, a rabbit hole you don't want to go down. Because, like you say, Peter, arbitration should be the least expensive route to go, even though it can cost $10,000, let's say, better than 50 or 100.
Yeah, at least
Yes. Generally speaking, yes.
At least get an answer. But
well, you guys once again had a wonderful show. I appreciate your time, and I've been a loyal listener, so I appreciate you putting up with me. I try not to come every week, but
thanks, John.
Have a great day.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks, John. Stay warm.
Yeah, and I want to thank John for calling in. We do want to try to help out on things like this, and even if it takes a while, you got multiple questions. We're here. That's why we're here every week. We're here for an hour so that we can answer those questions. And feel free. I was telling Peter before the show that, and it just mentioned this because we don't mention as much, that not only are we available on the air at WSTU, but we also are available on the internet. And we do have many people that when they go back up north, they join us on the internet. I was downtown yesterday and at the museum here in Stewart, and I was talking to a friend of mine down there, and guy pops up and says, I recognize that voice. You're Condo Solutions. So, and he listens on a regular basis from New York, on the internet, and was watching it. He used to own a unit down here, and then, still kind of would follow. So keep in mind that we are available on the internet. If you're outside the listening area, or maybe you're heading back up north for a while and you want to, keep track or have some issues or questions, you want to join us, you can do that. And, we'll get you on the air, and we used to have an email address for that, but that was when they used to charge you for long distance calls. But now that everybody's got a cell phone, we don't need to provide that anymore. But anyway, we are here. So if you have a question or something that you need to ask about, don't be shy. And we got a little bit of time left. So 220-9788, 220-WSTU. I think I forgot to give the number this morning. And that is the number in the studio. So it's area code 772-220-9788, which is also 772-220-WSTU. And you can call in if you've got a question. Peter, I saw something in the paper this last weekend, and it was saying that they're already in the hundreds of millions of dollars on the Champlain issue. And I tell you what, and it's going to be interesting to see how this thing shakes out. But a lot of these lawsuits, I'm pretty sure, are going to be against the board. And I think they're going to be going after, these, and I'm not sure that this is the case in Champlain, but we have a number of associations out there, and I'm speaking to the people that are right here in little old Martin County and St. Lucie County. You feel like you're doing what's best for the association, so you're trying to keep down assessments, and by doing that, potentially masking a problem that's huge. And those are the things that they're going to try to stop, and frankly should have been stopped previously. Your job as a director is not to get reelected and to minimize the fees to your members. That's not it. This isn't the president of the United States where your job is to get elected and go out there and pacify your voters, and so that's not it. You actually are being elected to a job that requires you to enter into almost a fiduciary responsibility to maintain that association. And that is your job, regardless of what the unit owners want. Frankly, they have the right to waive, and they can use that. That's their right. But you as a board, that's not your right. Your job is not to waive. Your job is to tell them what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it, and to propose that what they need to do to maintain that association. If they choose not to, that's their prerogative, and they need to take a vote to do that. But for those people out there that think, that have been president for the last 10 years, and I've kept the association's dues down to almost nothing. Well, you better be careful, because if you have a situation like the Champlain issue, and it turns out that you've kept those association dues down by not providing reserves and not fixing your common property, I think in the future that's going to be a much, much more dangerous situation than it has been in the past. That's just my thought on that, Peter. I don't know what your feeling is, but I think that that's going to be a huge awakening for some people.
Yeah, well, yes, and it should be. But on the other hand, we don't want to basically make everyone so terrified that no one will serve on a board. So, generally speaking, board members are not, and I know we're out of time here almost, but generally speaking, board members are not personally liable unless they've acted pretty egregiously, self-dealing, fraud, bad faith, things like that. I don't know whether the standards will change any post the tragedy. But you are 100% correct. Your job is to maintain the property, to the best of your ability in good faith.
Yeah. So we'll have more information probably coming out here in the next 2 years. That case doesn't start until 2023, by the way. They're not dealing with some of these cases till 2023. But anyway, appreciate the call this morning, John. Appreciate you out there listening and joining us. Write the number down. Keep it available. Peter, I appreciate you always being here and being great and answering all these questions. And hopefully you can join us again every Monday morning from 9 to 10 o'clock right here on WSTU Digital 1450. We're Martin County's Heritage Station.